Hello, bonjour and ahoy. I'm Roger Hilton, media presenter at GLOBsec, coming to you live from Bratislava. Welcome back to another edition of GLOBcast. In studio with us for our first episode of 2023 is Gautam Rana, Ambassador of the United States in Slovakia. And if you'll allow me, I'll introduce you, sir. Ambassador Rana has been in his current role since September of 2022. A career member of the Senior Foreign Service, Ambassador Rana previously served as Deputy Chief of Mission and Long-Term Chargé d'Affaires ad interim at the embassies of the United States in Algeria and Slovenia. He also served as Director for Afghanistan and Pakistan at the National Security Council from 2014 to 2015. Finally, his overseas diplomatic postings include Khost, Afghanistan, Peshawar, Pakistan, and Abu Dhabi in the United States Emirates. Ambassador Rana, thank you for joining us and welcome to GLOBcast.
Dobrý den, ako sa máte?
I'm okay. We'll see how it goes. Ambassador Rana, we can warm up to the heavy talks, but you've been here since September, as we said. How have you settled in and liking your posting and life in Slovakia thus far?
Yeah, so first let me say, Roger, thank you for having me on this program. It's a great honor to be here and to have this conversation. Slovakia is fantastic. This is such a beautiful country, and I've loved it. My family's loved it. My kids are having a great time. First and foremost, the people are just wonderful. They're just really genuinely warm and just had great conversations and met really terrific people. Secondly, very important, the food, the wine, the beer are top-notch, and I really enjoyed it. And then thirdly, the country is just beautiful. So we're really happy. We've really enjoyed our time here.
Well, Ambassador Rana, those are great descriptions of Slovakia, and it's the perfect segue for our first section focusing on U.S.-Slovakia cooperation. So for everybody in our audience, it goes without saying that the events of February 24th were really transformational that changed both regional, transatlantic security dynamic. As the conflict remains active, deterring Russia from NATO's eastern flank has never been more paramount, especially given your security background. With Russia's invasion of Ukraine, America has really responded and supported its allies in the region and beyond in Ukraine. So consequently, as a byproduct, U.S.-Slovak security cooperation has dramatically improved, marking a real new era in this dynamic. Its enforcement allowed, so this culminated, with the signing of the Defense Cooperation Agreement in 2022. Its enforcement allowed for a more comprehensive and deepening activity. So, Ambassador, with your security background, let me start by asking you, what do you assess as the greatest strengths and what areas are in need of further development when we look at this bilateral security cooperation?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're absolutely right. The Defense Cooperation Agreement, which the shorthand that we use, the DCA, was signed just weeks before the Russian invasion. And it ended up proving incredibly timely because after the invasion, I think all of NATO and all of Europe realized that Russia really could not be trusted, that in 2022, they violently invaded their neighbor. Of course, they did something similar in 2014, but this act of war and everything they've done since has just been awful. And what the DCA has allowed is for increased U.S.-Slovak defense cooperation. So, for example, it allowed for a NATO Enhanced Vigilance Activity Battle Group to come to Slovakia and to help provide, to enhance the security of Slovakia. And this allowed for greater cooperation between Slovakia and the United States on all areas of defense issues, including training, procurement, and most importantly, the greatest strength has been predictability. We know what to expect from each other as partners, as allies. And again, this was incredibly important right before the war, and it's something that we will take forward with this, that our relationship, especially our security relationship, is stronger than it's ever been. And I think one of the things that you asked for weaknesses, I'm not sure there are any. I think the greatest weakness was what happened before the DCA when it almost fell victim to disinformation. And we were able to power through that. The Slovak government passed it, and we've just really enhanced our cooperation. I think in the years to come, you'll see that the DCA is fundamental to increasing our relationship even more.
Well, Ambassador, that's a great opening intervention, as you said, an even better answer, saying that the only weakness thus far is that it wasn't this dynamic in the past. Let me ask you, how is the current bilateral security dynamic accelerating the modernization of the armed forces of Slovakia, and what does that mean for NATO's eastern flank, given that the DCA is in a very nascent stage right now?
Yeah, I'll give the government a lot of credit for its focus on military modernization and readiness. They have put a premium on this, I think, especially since the the Ukraine war. What military modernization does, and Slovakia is taking it very seriously, is it allows Slovakia to meet its Wales Pledge, which is the requirement by all NATO allies to spend 2% of their GDP on defense. But it's not just theoretical, it's extremely tangible. What military modernization does is it allows for greater interoperability and effectiveness of NATO forces because you have a number of different countries, obviously with sometimes different equipment and whatnot. But what military modernization allows for is that everyone can work together no matter what they're using. And to be able to communicate effectively. So you find that with enhanced vigilance activity battle group, which is comprised of a number of countries, including the United States, but the lead component is the Czechs. And so with the modernization efforts, in light of Russia, in light of Ukraine, it enhances Slovakia's security, and it also enhances the security of all of NATO allies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes without saying, one of the long-term goals of NATO right now is sort of having this single alignment, switching from Soviet systems to more Western systems.
Exactly.
And we've seen the success in Ukraine shows that it is possible. But that's great that, as you said, that this deepening activity is providing more security for Slovakia and more for regional stability. Speaking of regional stability, I have to get to sort of the elephant in the room.
Yep.
What steps are specifically being taken, in your opinion, to deter Russia and prevent further regional instability, given the stage of the fight right now in Ukraine?
Sure. I think the greatest deterrence factor, frankly, is that Russia gets defeated in Ukraine. President Biden has been absolutely clear on this, that Russia must be defeated and Ukraine must recover its territory. That's the U.S. position. It's the NATO position. Slovakia has been a tremendous NATO ally, has provided per capita among the five top countries in the world in terms of support for Ukraine. The United States has an unwavering commitment to Article 5. What that means is if you are a NATO ally, the United States, and I think every NATO ally, will stand by each other. As part of that, our commitment, the United States has put U.S. troops as part of the battle group, the NATO battle group. We quickly deployed Patriots last year because Slovakia provided its S-300 air defense system to Ukraine. We are now working with the Slovak government and Italian colleagues to ensure that there is a smooth handover to the Italians on relief, because what this does is what this transfer is exactly what NATO is all about, that it is the NATO alliance that is responsible for the collective defense, collective security of all the members. Some people, frankly speaking, including in Slovakia, are trying to paint what's going on in Ukraine as this fight between the United States and Russia. It's not.
Yeah, it's not a proxy war.
Between Russia and Ukraine, and the NATO alliance is supporting Ukraine because this is just such an illegal war. And the NATO alliance is a collective alliance. And so it's not just the United States providing support to Slovakia, it's all NATO countries. So in terms of regional security, I think everyone's commitment, including the United States, to NATO is stronger than it's ever been. And I think going forward, it's unfortunate what's happened in Ukraine, but Putin made a huge strategic security error in that he brought us all together stronger than ever before.
I mean, the comments you said are just ringing true. And as you know, we record this podcast today and our interview right now, it comes on the heels of major developments in Germany with the Scholz chancellery agreeing to finally send Leopard tanks, and then the announcement coming up from the Pentagon about the Abrams tanks being sent. And just in a greater context, security is just one part of the relation between Slovakia and the United States, but it often goes forgotten sometimes that, for instance, Jill Biden, the First Lady, came from Slovakia through Slovakia to Ukraine to meet Mrs. Zelenska. So as you said, I mean, just another example of it. One last security question before we pivot to the economic EU realm is, can you speak a little bit to the current state of working relationship between the United States and Slovakia when it comes to cybersecurity?
Sure. On cybersecurity, we actually have a lot of different programs that we're working on together. So first of all, we've actually provided over $5 million to fight back on disinformation. We've also provided over $1 million to set up a cybersecurity defense environment for the Ministry of Defense. This allows for their cyber warriors to be able to protect Slovakia and to push back on disinformation types of issues. We also have extensive programs with government officials, with academics, with R&D institutions. We've provided fellowships, we've provided workshops, grants, allowing for a greater cooperation on these issues because we're all fighting them together. We're all challenged by disinformation, and we all need to work together to beat back this effort because it's a global threat. And I think the way we're going to combat it is by working together, united across the world.
It's supremely encouraging to get your take and saying that sort of this part of this relationship is growing. And as you said, I mean, it's important to it's impossible to compartmentalize these issues, and you can't keep it to one side of the continent. So I mean, thank you. Slovakia is so great for all of it. Let's move to sort of the EU-US relations. So outside of the hard security realm, Ambassador, since the war, especially Washington and Brussels have worked on a range of initiatives global, ranging from the enforcement of Russian sanctions to combating climate change. Nonetheless, there is a little bit of trouble. So relations between the U.S. and the EU have been under more pressure recently due to the Inflation Reduction Act. For everybody out there, the IRA. So as this topic has gone on, Davos has just ended where members of Congress have been there. Let me get your take. What processes are underway to address the concerns of Europeans and ensure continued productive partnership to tackle global issues take place against this backdrop?
Sure. I'll turn to your question, the broader question in a minute. But one of the things that I want to emphasize as Ambassador, as you noted, I arrived here in September. One of my top goals is to ideally increase bilateral trade between Slovakia and the United States. Between 2016 and 2021, trade between the two countries increased from almost $2.8 billion to $5.4 billion, which is terrific, almost 100% increase. I would love for, in the years to come that we continue to increase it. It's one of my top goals. So if I can find ways to help, Slovak companies invest in the United States, that's something I'd love to do. And obviously to help facilitate American businesses that want to invest here in Slovakia. One of the things that we are now actively working on is that the Department of Commerce has what's called the Select USA Summit, which will hold in June. This is an opportunity for firms that are interested in investing in the United States. Direct foreign investment allows them to come to one global forum and find out how to, not just how to find out how to invest, because these companies are very smart; they'll be able to do that on their own. But to facilitate that process, including allowing them to meet with representatives from all 50 states and local municipalities and whatnot, so that for those who might be out there who are interested, please reach out to the embassy if you're interested in the Select USA Summit. In terms of the IRA and European Union, first of all, again, I think it was a huge strategic error by Putin in terms of the war. It's been awful for the Ukrainian people, and the Russian army has committed awful atrocities. But the one silver lining in all of this is that the West, European Union, NATO, I think, is stronger than ever. Everyone realizes that Putin is a threat, and we cooperate even, I think, more closely than ever. Now, the thing about the IRA is what it's actually oriented towards. It's a historic achievement in terms of fighting climate change and increasing, frankly, green energies. It will help the United States. It'll put it on track to achieve President Biden's goal of reaching net zero emissions by 2050. It will provide historic investment, $370 billion in clean energy and climate solutions. Now, this also presents terrific opportunities for European firms, as well as benefits to European energy security by helping Europe also accelerate its energy transition and to realigning clean energy options and supply chains. We completely understand that our European partners have concerns about it. President Biden in December stood with President Macron of France the day after they met at the White House, and he said, I understand our European partners have concerns, and we'll work on it. And right now, there is a United States EU IRA task force. This is working at the highest levels with the highest members of the Biden-Harris administration, as well as senior officials from the European Commission. They're working out all these issues. So I share the president's confidence that the concerns that our European partners can be worked out. But the larger achievement is that the IRA will help the United States really move forward in terms of becoming more energy efficient and helping the planet with climate change, which I think will also be of great benefit to European firms and all the members of the EU.
Well, Ambassador, I mean, those are great sort of points that you've listed, especially sort of navigating the complex American system. And again, we'll definitely come back to the Select USA Summit in future episodes or future correspondences. But my takeaway, which is great, is that which hasn't gotten a lot of media attention, is, as you said, is that there's the highest level IRA task force working together to get through it. So at least from my perspective here is, of course, this is an issue that needs work, but in the spirit of cooperation, things are moving in the right direction. And as you said, this is a win-win for the environment and for the world. Transitioning to another point, you mentioned the word energy, and we've said it, you mentioned it twice already, how President Putin has made a massive strategic mistake. So one of the greatest advantages the United States has been providing right now is sort of its energy independence. So now with the European Union really looking to wane itself off of Russian gas, what are the options that America can do to help Europe really achieve energy independence without Russia?
Yeah, that's a great question. And once again, let me start with Slovakia, which I think has actually done a fairly admirable job in terms of changing its energy mix. On February 23rd, 2022, Slovakia energy mix was 85% dependent on Russian natural gas, 100% on Russian nuclear fuel, and 100% dependent on Russian oil. Almost 1 year later, LNG and natural gas has dropped down to about 30% Russian. And the United States is proudly part of that change. We've supplied LNG to Slovakia. Slovakia has also signed contracts with Norway, and my understanding is other suppliers. And it's not only Slovakia. The United States has provided LNG to throughout Europe. We've doubled our LNG exports to Europe between 2021 and 2022. I would also note, this because this has been some point of contention, that the export prices from U.S. LNG suppliers was actually fairly low. It was some of the complaints that we had heard about, the United States is taking advantage of this global energy crisis, was actually what was happening is we were selling it to traders who then were selling and upping up the prices on the spot market. And so that wasn't U.S. LNG suppliers. This was happening in the oil trading markets. So it's just that criticism was a little bit unfair, because I think when you look at the hard facts, the United States has really provided and stepped up to help Europe get through this winter and to make up for the attempts by Putin to use energy security as a way to hold Europe hostage. Now, beyond that, we are particularly one area that I'd love to work with Slovakia on, and again, in all fairness, I think the Slovak government is doing it on its own, is looking for alternate suppliers for nuclear fuel. That's a key area. Hopefully, there'll be some movement on that, and I know this is of importance to Slovak officials. We're also working with the EU writ large, with the US-EU Task Force on Energy Security and the US-EU Energy Council. So we're trying to support EU efforts on a wide range of energy issues to ensure energy security, not only for this winter, where I think Europe has been remarkably successful, but going forward, so that Europe no longer remains completely and utterly dependent on Russian energy.
Well, Ambassador, it's great that you sort of come on and you've set the record straight when it comes to sort of clarifying the oil trading market issue and how it was on the spot and not on it, which, as you said, has been a bit of a contentious issue. We've covered a lot of ground already, security, EU-US relations, but let's go back to sort of the public diplomacy field. Just in this short conversation with you, Ambassador, I'm tracking 3 major issues that Slovakia and the United States are working on. Security, trade, and energy, all heading in the right direction. So what are some of the other ongoing projects the American Embassy here in Bratislava are working on?
Roger, you've read my mind. When I came into the embassy, the embassy team and I have sort of focused on 4 major goals. And the first major goal we talked about was regional security, especially given what's going on in Ukraine. The second major goal was trade relations. Third is energy security, again, given what's going on in the world. And the fourth is actually a larger basket of what we call shared values. The United States and Slovakia as democracies share a lot of values, and that's an importance on rule of law, focus on anti-corruption, human rights issues, and so these are areas that we have a lot of programs with, across Slovakia, with whether it's with NGOs, with government entities, with universities. So we have anti-corruption and rule of law programs, where the rule of law programs in particular bring together U.S. and Slovak law enforcement agencies. We're working to fight extremism and hate. We promote shared values, including human rights issues as well as freedom of the press. We've donated $21 million to international NGOs, which are using those funds to help Ukrainian refugees in Slovakia, because Slovakia has done such an incredible job in terms of providing support to Ukrainian refugees. We also have terrific education exchange programs, which allow for U.S. scholars to come to Slovakia, Slovak scholars to go to the United States, allows high school students to travel to the United States, and also provides opportunities for government officials to go on programs. We have English language programs, and I have to do a huge shout out to my public diplomacy team for the work they do with our American centers. These are spaces where folks have come and we've been able to provide information about the United States, about studying in the United States, but also to provide information on digital and media literacy. So very proud of all these programs. And the last area I'd really like to talk about in this larger basket is just to increase people-to-people ties. I would love for more Americans to come to the United States, so I'm thinking about how I can do that. But while I'm here, I actively try to promote opportunities for folks here to go to the United States, especially students. I'd love for students to go and spend some time. We have some really interesting programs. And again, if you're a high school student, you're listening to this, or a college-age student, contact the embassy. We'll get you some more information about the opportunities, many of which we pay for fully.
Well, Ambassador, as you said, we've talked about all of these major issues, and it goes with a lot of the headlines in the paper, security, trade, and energy. But just going back to it, when you arrived, did you expect that the shared values basket was going to be as critical to your tenureship as it is here? Or in the sense that, are these issues that necessarily might not have been priorities in the past for the State Department? Because you said like-minded nations working together, autocracies working together against democracies. So it's no less important than any of the other major categories you guys are working at the embassy.
No, I agree. I think it's critically important. And it wasn't actually a surprise, and I'll tell you why. Before I came here and I started learning more and more about Slovakia, it seems like this is important to the Slovak people, that there was a great outpouring. I think it's always been there, right? I mean, Slovakia is a very young country. I forgot to say it. I should have said at the top, congratulations to Slovakia for its 30th anniversary. It's a really exciting time for a young nation. But time and time again, I think the Mečiar years, a period after that, where Slovaks have stood up and if not quite fought for their rights, but advocated for them. They come out to the streets. They've noted the importance of rule of law issues, corruption, anti-corruption issues, and of course, we really saw that after the murder of the investigative journalist Jan Kuciak and his fiancée Martina Kushnerova. I think the 2020 elections were very much about that, where people were voicing their support for rule of law. They were voicing their support for anti-corruption. They were voicing their support for democracy. They were voicing their support for human rights. And so these are, of course, our values which are extremely important to the United States. So it was a natural fit that we would continue working together on this. The thing about democracy is this. It's a constant struggle. Right, you can't just assume that once you're a democracy, everything's fine. We in the United States have our own challenges. Ensuring that we remain a healthy and strong democracy. And I think every democracy in the world struggles with this. So this is a continual sort of fight that we can do together. To help each other and to ensure that democratic values remain paramount because they're extremely important to the people of the United States as well as Slovakia.
Ambassador, as I said, this process of democracy, it's in constant renewal, and nobody, whether it's in Slovakia or the United States, can take it for granted. Obviously, shocking images coming out of Brazil already about it, so it's a work in progress. And as I said, Slovakia is deeply thankful for this commitment from the American Embassy to be working in this basket in addition to a host of other major issues. Ambassador, we're running out of time here on GLOBcast, but as we said, we like to end on a light note. Already, it's quite apparent your Slovak is better than mine. So let me get you on a couple of things. You've been here since September. You're on the hot seat. Outside of Bratislava, can you tell our listeners what is your favorite city?
Well, this is where I have to be the ultimate diplomat.
Okay.
I have no second favorite city or even a first favorite city. As much as I love Bratislava, everywhere I've gone to in Bratislava, it's been fantastic. I had the opportunity just yesterday to go to Žilina. Beautiful city, just the location, the people. I had a wonderful, wonderful day. Eugene Cernan, the last man to walk on the moon, an Apollo astronaut. His family comes from the Žilina area. A couple of months ago, I got to go out to Košice out east and also spend time in Prešov. Really, again, wonderful, different, but really just very interesting. And then last October, soon after I arrived, my family and I got to go to Trnava, and we got to go to the Cabbage Festival, which was a ton of fun. So I think I need to see a lot more of Slovakia before I can sit there and say that I have favorites, because right now everything is my favorite.
You also had the opportunity. You blessed us. You privileged your honor with us at the 2022 Tatra Summit. So you've seen a little bit of the mountains, which is always a big surprise. And one of my favorite lines so far, Ambassador, is you said you want to do more people to people. So maybe that's the line to the Americans. Is I got a great Cabbage Fest. My last question, maybe a little bit less controversial, is in terms of food and drink. How is your palate? Have you been taken care of, as they say here in Slovakia, when it comes to the food?
So you asked me earlier what's been a surprise. I'll tell you the single biggest surprise, and maybe this was my own fault. It's definitely my own fault. The Slovak wines have been fantastic. Just not something that I would have expected, frankly speaking, and frankly not that anyone had really talked to me about beforehand. But I've had a range of Slovak wines, whites and reds, and I don't think I've had a bad wine here yet. And so that's been really terrific. And I will say also that I love the fact that Slovakia has a soup culture where every meal, lunch and dinner begins with soup. And I love soup. So just having, knowing that soup is going to be part of the meal is just terrific. So I've really enjoyed that.
Well, I think the wine is one of the best kept secrets in Slovakia.
It really is.
And I think, unfortunately, with climate change, it's working towards that. But Ambassador, on that note, thank you so much for coming on to GLOBcast, for sharing it. And as I said, the people in Washington are so lucky to have you here. And we look forward to more cooperation with you with GLOBsec. Finally, for all of our listeners, this GLOBcast and all of our social media products can be found as podcasts on Spotify. So from Roger Hilton, goodbye and have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you, Roger. Thank you for having me. And thank you for GLOBsec for allowing me this opportunity too.
Great.